My dad and I have a special connection. We both believe in miracles. Now, some might chuckle as my dad's and I mean well-documented book of miracles, most could chalk up to forgetfulness, and many likely were. What I personally know is that there is an energy about experiencing a miracle, and it is not something that can be communicated adequately with others. My dad's experience and belief in miracles demonstrates the extreme level of faith, trust, and belief that he has. If asked what one overriding quality about my dad is, it is his spirituality. Anyone who knows him well, and most who barely knew him at all, I'm sure, would easily say that his spirituality was front and center in his beingness and conversation. His strong faith and practice in the Catholic Church, along with his patriotic love for his country, defined my father, a true Christian soldier. Summing up 89 plus years in a few moments of time is definitely a challenge. Dad had a goal to reach 90, and from my perspective, he did. Year 89 was complete, and he was working his way through each 90th day. He was born to two amazing parents in a small borough in Pennsylvania in 1933 and grew up as an only child. Catholicism was the teaching that shaped the entire experience of his life. As I've heard it said, his entire physical experience here on earth was preparing for his journey to heaven. A graduate of Penn State University and an Army veteran of the draft, he moved his young family to Eulogy, Ohio, and worked as a meteorologist for the National Weather Service. He and his wife Linda joined the parish of St. Raphael's Church, and this community became the foundation for the lives of his 4 children as well. Myself and my brothers, Ronnie, Danny, and David, also known as Sid, Ron, Dan, and Dave. Many may not know, but there are actually 5 Chudowski Sibs. Baby Stanley passed away a few short hours after birth in 1966. A sports enthusiast, throughout his life, he had a passion for playing and watching baseball and was a huge Steelers fan. Dad was always the Pittsburgh fan. Page flip. And the rest of the family was all about the Cleveland teams, which created a fun dynamic in the household. Now, this did not diminish his absolute love for the Cleveland teams, and many hours was spent discussing play-by-play with his sportscaster son, Dave. He was an amazing ice skater and talented enough to be an instructor. Dad is an artist, and I imagine his work could have gained some notoriety, but he was always working hard in other areas, supporting family life. Just a few short months ago, at 89, he sketched an amazing view out of his long-term care window and fulfilled requests from the staff to give them autographed copies. His grandson, Zachary, and many of our pets are memorialized in Dad's home art gallery. Just a few weeks ago, Dad and I picked out pictures of my pup Kodiak, nicknamed Big Dog by Dad, so he could begin to sketch her to add to the gallery. We ordered him fresh new drawing pencils, but that drawing never happened. As sick as Dad was by this point, he never lost sight of future possibilities. Childhood memories for us include ice skating and sledding in the winter months, trips to Bay Village outdoor rinks and the Bay Sledding Hill were treasured times, a very occasional trip to McDonald's, and yes, all the way to North Olmsted was a trip in those days. This was a rare treat. Days at Bay Pool when Dad was able to join us were always great fun. We got to be human cannonballs as Dad playfully launched us into the water, and Dad being the human shark as he swam underwater to playfully do a sneak attack. Being allowed to accompany Dad into the secret unknown space under the house called the crawl space when he had to do a repair, rare occasions of fire in the fireplace, and for me, the annual Christmas setting up of the Nativity when I got to hold the small plastic baby Jesus and lay him in the crib in the manger. The nights that Dad pulled out the slide projector and we all sat around watching Family Memories were of the most special times. And honestly, some days, hoping it would be Mom that would pick us up from school so as not to have to listen to Dad's non-stop dialogue in the car. That being said, the trips across country, well, actually just the state line, were well worth the listening as we knew we were going to Grandma and Grandpa's house. In more recent years, a family game of telephone around the dining room table brought bountiful laughter and tears to our eyes. We all knew that when the phrase reached Dad, it would be transformed into some unrecognizable version in no way related to the starter phrase. Dad was a good sport. Dad spent many hours in the stands and bleachers, watching as my brothers competed in sports. Mostly, I remember Dad as the head of our family, the breadwinner, the churchgoer, the keeper of the list. The list that, as he mentioned every time we asked for something to be done, his response accompanied by a look and a sigh, "I'll put it on my list." He was the taskmaster with always a home project going on. He was a craftsman, and home repairs were done in partnership with his dad, including building a huge shed in our backyard. His dad was his buddy. The first time I saw my dad break down in tears was when his own father passed. Dad sacrificed by working shift work, rotating days, evenings, and nights. The weather doesn't take a day off, so his schedule was 365. He passed up on work promotions, which would have meant more income, but a transfer to another state and uprooting his family. Dad was committed to his word. He and Mom celebrated 60 years of marriage in 2020. We knew Dad's word was law, but honestly, for Dad to raise his voice or a hand was extremely rare. It was probably our mother's threats of, "Wait till your father gets home," that led to the perception we had something to fear. He had quite a job in supporting and being the final word in raising 4 children. Dad was always right. Even when his children were grandparents themselves, he still knew best, even when he didn't. Dad's commitment to family continued as he took an early retirement and cared for not only his mom and dad, but our mom's parents as well. He stayed by his dad's bedside in his hometown of East Vandergrift and cared for him through his sickness. Subsequently, our family moved down the street from one West Oviatt home into another, a larger home, so each of our grandparents could live and be cared for at home in their senior days. My dad, the main caregiver to all. Having 4 children, there were many relationships that formed and parted ways throughout the years. Dad gained 3 amazing daughters who cared for and loved him as if he was their own dad. Kathy, Tracy, and Lindsay, in order of family entry. This also meant that I finally had sisters. Dad is also grandpa to Jackie, Jeffrey, Zachary, Zoe, Caroline, and her sister Jessica, Brooklyn, London, and great-grandpa to Vera, Vetter, Valen, and Jackson's big brother Zai, Jessica's children Max, Lucy, and Bella. Okay, in our family, pets are important too, so how can I leave out the puppies, Baron, Samson, Jody, Laska, also known as Alaska, and Rosie. Kitties, Coco, Benjamin, Max, Caesar, Royce, Chudley, and Gus. I sometimes reflect on the generosity of my parents in their accepting so many animals into their home. Family name was a frequent topic of conversation, but it was his daughter that gave him his grandsons. He spent lots of time with his firstborn grandson, Jeffrey, when he was a little guy. And it was that little guy turned amazing man that spent so much of Dad's last months supporting him. Dad didn't miss an occasion to send a card, and he made sure for every holiday, each of his children and grandchildren received a personal card with a special keepsake. As I was skimming through some of Dad's things, I found this written in a tiny journal of his: "Closer to God in pain." I know some wish the opportunities and timing around Dad's passing had worked out differently, and of course no one wants to see another human suffering. My dad once said that we never know what impact can be made by just a single word or encounter that could be had as a result of the perfectly imperfect timing of one's passing, the perfectly imperfect timing of one's suffering. There are so many times when I have sat in faith, trust, and belief that the experience of another individual is having is just the way it's meant to be. When we do everything we can for someone, we make the best choices we can in following our heart, and we wish it could be different, yet it isn't. Dad did suffer. And that brings me full circle to our shared belief in miracles. As I was driving into town to be with Dad in what was unfolding as his last physical days, I wondered to myself, what miracles would unfold in the process? On that final morning, Dad lay in his hospice bed. I waited for Iria, who became my parents' earth angel over the years, to arrive so I could shower. As I was finishing in the bathroom, I heard Jeffrey's voice in the room and Iria singing, "I surrender all, Holy Spirit come, and onward Christian soldier," Dad's favorites. I started talking to Dad in my thoughts and said, "Yes, Dad, it's okay to surrender. It's time to take flight with the Holy Spirit. You have been an amazing Christian soldier." I dressed and walked out looking towards my dad, and the look on his face was the most peaceful I had seen him since arriving. I felt compelled to take a quick video as Iria sang. I then walked over to put on my socks, and Iria said, "Sydney, is he breathing?" I quickly went to his side and watched. No breath. I waited and watched, and no more breaths came. I watched the video clip and saw that Dad's last breath was taken in that video as Iria sang. As my brothers Tracy and I sat at the funeral home, as the director shared Dad's plans for his funeral, he asked if we wanted to see his memorial card, and we said yes. And then he asked if we wanted to see the passage he had chosen on his card, and we said yes. It read, "Lord, when my soul takes flight, may it rise swiftly to live forever in your love and care." How miraculous is that? Dad chose that verse years ago in pre-planning. At the moment of his passing, he was surrounded by his favorite related songs. Our family love, we were all cared for, provided for, and loved. That love was shown and expressed through the care and actions Dad took. Saying "I love you" was not a thing. Somewhere along my journey, I began ending all my phone calls to Dad with "I love you." I would chuckle to myself as Dad would offer some incomprehensible mumble. Then his response of "likewise" became a routine, which I thought was so endearing because now he was verbally responding. Then an occasional "I love you" in response to my "I love you" started sneaking in. A few weeks ago, Dad called. We chatted on some things, and as the call was ending, I was left with a memory that I will treasure forever. Before I had a chance, Dad said, "I love you first." We invite all of you to join us and celebrate with some more of our Chudowski special family love at the Cleveland Yacht Club after the service. We'll be gathering there at 11.